Hello everyone and welcome to the 39th episode of the Orcocast. Today with me, Lord Val Gaming.
Hi.
And Bum Bum.
Hello.
We are talking about amazing things like Little Nightmares 2. We are talking about Persona 5 Strikers and we are talking about Avengers.
Marvel Avengers.
Yeah, the thing I always forget about.
Best game ever.
Yeah, best game ever. Hashtag deadest game ever as well. Okay, let's go. Little Nightmares 2. What is Little Nightmares 2, you might ask, or not? I don't know. If you have played the predecessor, you are probably very well aware with Little Nightmares. It's a 2.5D jump and run atmospheric horror game, I guess. It's probably the best way to describe it. Very low on gameplay mechanics, very high in atmosphere. I think what the game does really well is it tries to show and emphasize horror scenarios from the daily life of a child, like going to a hospital or getting lost in the wilderness or getting bullied at school. And I think what this game does, it does it really well. You can soak up the atmosphere. Yeah, it's been out for a while. I have it played around 4 hours. Bum Bum would probably say I'm too slow, you can finish that thing in 1 hour. Or how long was it, Bum Bum?
Yeah, the world record at the moment, I think, is like 1 hour and 15 or 17 minutes.
Jesus Christ.
But you have to speed run it. If you have played the predecessor in Little Nightmares 1, it's not all that much different from that one, so it's basically the same mechanic, same whatever you want to do there. Obviously it has new scenarios, a new story to tell, but that's about it. I like it. It's not a masterpiece by any stretches of the imagination, but I like it well enough. Let's put it that way. It has some things I dislike. It has more things that I like.
But what's the good and what's the bad?
The bad one is, like I said, it's very light on gameplay. It's, for example, if you have the combat, or if there is a combat section, it essentially boils down to a quick time event.
Okay.
It's not really a quick time event or communicated as a quick time event, but it's basically one hit kills for you and the enemy. And you have to just press the button at the right time. There's a little bit of a leeway there. That's how combat turns out. There are some stealth sections.
Yeah.
Where you have to sneak around, but they are also very obvious what to do. There's something where you need to react fast and hide, for example, because the monster comes in. It works all well, and it takes bits and pieces from other horror games, like hiding, or like I said, stealth, or a little bit of combat, but it's all very simplified and all very, let's say, beginner friendly, which is not a bad thing. For me, it's not enough. I'm gonna put it that way. I long for a little bit more.
Yeah, I guess it's not engaging enough. There's enough to keep you entertained, but it doesn't really engage you on like a mechanical level.
What I like about it is it actually, when it comes to horror games, horror games are very hard to do. And a lot of horror games just rely on cheap jump scares, for example, to get you frightened. I do actually appreciate and reckon that the game Little Nightmares 2 doesn't go for that, and it actually tries to build atmosphere. It tries to give you the creeps. It tries to build up to stuff, like in the school level they are building up to the teacher and what the teacher actually can do. I think this is the way to go when it comes to horror. They don't show everything right away. They do show you a lot of stuff first, in not directly, but at one point they're coming out swinging.
Right.
Makes sense?
Mm-hmm.
And like I said, the other thing I really like is how or what inspired their horror. These daily things a kid experiences, a child experiences through the lens of horror, and how a child could perceive it as being horrifying.
That's really quite interesting.
Yeah, so basically, if you're a child, I can personally imagine that a visit to the hospital that terrifies you, that your mind or your fantasy goes rampant, your imagination goes rampant, that it would look like this in your imagination. The hospital level. That's the one thing I really like about it. So it's something that they do very, very well, and that's the one thing that works for me in this game and that keeps me playing because I want to see what they do next.
Sounds good.
Sounds good. Pricing wise, is
30 euros.
Yep.
30 euros without the season pass and 40 euros with the season pass. Like
Platforms is available for PC only?
everywhere. It's everywhere.
Everywhere. Cool.
And I think if you're unsure if you like the game, the first one is on Game Pass.
Yeah, you can play it for free if you have Game Pass Ultimate.
Yeah.
Yep.
And then you can gauge, oh, I like this, or no, I don't like this, and then maybe invest in the second part.
Awesome.
Yeah. Just be aware,
great.
like I said, there is little difference in terms of gameplay from the first to the second part, but that's okay. I recommend it. Thumbs up. Let's move on to Persona 5 Strikers.
Persona 5 Strikers is a game. It's a spin-off of the Persona 5 game, and it's in a way it's a direct sequel to the story of the original Persona game, Persona 5 game. It's not a sequel to the Persona 5 Royale, since the new characters from the Royale version are missing, and instead it adds a couple of its own new characters. And it's a spin-off made in collab with Tecmo Koei Musou team that does all the Musou games or Dynasty Warriors, Sengoku Basara, the Samurai Warriors games. And yeah, it plays much like you'd expect from a spin-off like that, say like they did with Hyrule Heroes for Legend of Zelda. So they take the characters and some of the mechanics from the core game and plant them into a Musou game, which is hero characters fighting against swaths of enemies. And here they do it through reintroducing the personas. Personas are essentially your weapons. You use them to use skills, passive abilities, stuff like that. Like in a normal Persona game, just it's a real-time action game instead of a turn-based RPG. And there's some weird clash between the systems because I don't feel like they did enough balancing of the RPG with the action game. So sometimes, especially with the status effects, you usually get knocked down on your butt and you just sit on the ground for an arbitrary amount of time while the enemy is free to wail at you.
That
And the
reminds
thing,
me, excuse me, Bam Bam, that actually reminds me kind of like, it's very frustrating, isn't it?
yeah.
It's kind of like Monster Hunter.
No, it's not.
No? It's
Because
even
in
worse.
Monster Hunter, you get knocked out if you're bad. Here is
What?
just like straight up bad hitboxes.
Yeah, well, I'm referring to the actual feeling of yourself as a player where it's very, you feel really, like, it's very frustrating, isn't it? When you like can't get back up. And I
Yeah.
don't know why they use that method. That's kind of annoying, in my opinion. I don't know.
No,
that might be
like,
the different culture,
no.
isn't it? Maybe on gaming.
No. It's like it's a fine aspect. It just needs to be balanced. And in Monster Hunter, it works because A, you can mitigate with skills, and B, usually like if you're good enough, it just doesn't happen to you. Here, it just because essentially, as far as I have gone with my testing, like you have essentially a dodge,
Yeah.
but it feels like the dodge essentially doesn't have any or has very little invincibility frames.
Uh-huh.
So essentially, you're vulnerable all the way as you're dashing. So even if you get essentially hit while you're doing the dash, you might still get stunned while you're trying to get away from danger. And I think because of the volume of the enemies and the size of the area of effect on some of those attacks,
Uh-huh.
it just doesn't feel fair. But yeah, I think but then again, that's like a common thing with most of the Musou games, and especially the spin-offs, that they don't really do too good a job balancing the mechanics to incorporate the mechanics of the Musou games and the mechanics of the core game from which they take the stuff. So here it's Persona and it's RPG
Okay.
stuff. So they take a couple of spins as well on the core themes from Persona 5. So here, instead of palaces that are built around like a warped personality of essentially the villain or the antagonist of that chapter of the game, here they have what they call jails or prisons that you have to break into, and it takes a bit more prep because usually each prison has several different stages that you have to complete before you can get into the main part and fight the main boss of the chapter. So it feels like essentially if you were like a dinosaur game, you would capture smaller bases on the map around, and then you can go for the main castle. So you're essentially doing that. Just here it's there's different context for it. There's in prison, but what I like, there's stuff like with the prisons that comes up as well is like palaces in the original game, they would disappear after you finish them, and here they stay after you finish them. And given it started its life as a Switch game, which is essentially a portable game, it feels like I still haven't finished it, but at the same time, I feel like I'm far enough to get this feeling that once the like next bit, story beat hits, I'm gonna have to redo all the jails over again. They're just gonna reuse them, or at least I'm getting that idea. So it feels like the designs are varied in between, but I feel like they're just gonna become repetitive because the game's gonna force me go through all of them again. But at the same time, I'm enjoying a lot of the stuff that as it comes up, especially the story. The new characters are great. I like that since they don't have to reintroduce the characters from the previous game, so they all act like essentially the Phantom Thief from the end of Persona 5. So you get pretty much the best bits of their character right away. You don't have to slog through the essentially the visual novel part of the OG Persona 5. And that's another thing. There is essentially no visual novel part to Persona 5 Strikers. It's a very much story-driven action game where the RPG aspects are sort of limited or have only marginal effects. Essentially, the effect is your numbers go bigger. Like
Your numbers,
even for,
but what do you mean
yeah,
by your numbers go bigger?
because it's an RPG, so your HP, your SP, your
Oh,
strength,
okay, yeah,
stuff
yeah.
like that goes bigger.
Makes sense. Yeah. Okay.
So and like it feels a bit disheartening because Persona 5, like yes, you can play it disregarding much of the depth of the system when it comes
Uh-huh.
to especially dealing with the personas here. But like if you engage with it, it's super rewarding because you can, make yourself either OP or make interesting builds or challenge yourself doing like themed builds or whatever. Here essentially it doesn't have that because mainly I think the number of personas you can use, personas essentially like your weapon/summons that you use to use skills like magic or physical skills. They essentially, I think, slashed the number of overall personas to like 1/3 or maybe even less from the original Persona, or not counting Royale because Royale added so many of them. And yeah, so that's one other issue. It feels super cut down, and it's obvious they have been cutting a lot of corners, but at the same time I feel like there's a lot of heart, especially from the writing team, because the story is super great. The new characters are extremely fun, especially Sophia. She's introduced really early. She's an obvious plot twist in the making, and I'm not even mad because like her dialogue alone and the jokes they have her deliver are so much fun, especially in conjunction with the characters from the original Persona 5. So
Uh-huh.
it works, especially in that regard. Like if you're in it just for the story, you can just turn down the difficulty to essentially 0 to the story difficulty, breeze through the game, enjoy it as a nice, just like a, I don't know, like 20-hour anime, and get on with your life. And I think that's the best thing the game has going for it is the story. It's a really cool, almost a road trip story where you go across Japan solving this mystery with those characters and all the character moments that arise from that. I think the villains I've seen so far are not interesting all that much, but what carries me really through the game is actually the characters from the Persona 5 game and how they essentially developed over the time they have not been together and how they interact on this trip, which puts them into, zany situations. So
Okay.
that's fun. Another great aspect is the soundtrack. They have a couple of new tracks. The one that was premiered at the Game Awards, the redone Last Surprise, is an absolute banger. It's one of the best tracks out there I've heard so far this year. Yeah, so I would say it's a really mixed bag. There's a lot to like, there's a lot to not like, and given the price tag, which on PC is almost 60 quid, I think it's like 55 quid on PC. Yeah, I think it's a hard sell to me. Obviously, people seem to really buy into it because it's the only Persona 5 product that you can get on PC at the moment. So I can get why why it's popular, and people seem to like it. I just think that there could have been so much more done with this, especially with the concept of action Persona game.
I mean, just to go in there real quickly. Yes, there could have been done more, and I agree with you. But on the other hand, sometimes you just have to say it's better than nothing. In a good way, not in the Inafune way.
I agree with that.
I guess you could say they could have been doing more, but on the other hand, if you imagine how much games the Muso team actually cranks out, I mean they work from a template completely. And I do think that they are just as formulaic as something like Activision with Call of Duty. They are probably more cost efficient though.
Yeah, for sure.
But I think if you just look at what the Muso team did and where they are going, I think this is one of their better efforts.
Oh yeah, definitely. I would say I liked it more than Hyrule Warriors. I'm gonna say that just because it's I think they do better job integrating story into the gameplay.
I think they
And
had some help there with integrating the story.
yeah, and I think that's one of the
And I
aspects
think
that I
that helped. And the Zelda story has never been really all that, in quotation, strong. It is a very basic story that is very well told, but Zelda was never so much about the story. So, and Atlas, I think, if I gauge this correctly, was very interested that the story is done.
Oh yeah, especially because I think it's really pretty much the only real direct sequel they made ever, and I think they just wanted to if they're I think they wanted to essentially use it as an exercise as well to see
Yeah.
if people would be interested in direct sequels to games.
Of
Because I'm still
course.
waiting for that sequel to Persona 3, right?
Persona 3 2.
I mean, I wouldn't be mad. I just want to know how it ends.
What I still want is like a direct sequel to Shin Megami Tensei Nocturne.
Lucifer's
That would be
yeah.
swell. I mean, I could still buy the remake or the absurd price they are asking.
Yeah, that seems to be the pattern for Atlas now. Overpricing remasters.
I mean, I love. Okay, let's go back to Strikers. So, Bum, if you just look at the whole package, thumbs up or thumbs down?
Yeah, somewhere in the middle. I'm torn because I'm a giant. Like I love Shin Megami Tensei as a series and the Persona games, which pretty much has become a standalone series as well on its own. Yes, like those are amazing games, and I love the story. And some of the gameplay is fun. Like they still try to integrate some of the thieving stuff, like stealth from I'm not sure it was too heavily in the original Persona game, Persona 5, but it was more pronounced in the Royale version. So yeah, they tried to do some things with it, but at the same time, I think it's a big hit and miss. And if you're going in for the gameplay, I'd say no. If you're a big Persona 5 nut and you just want to see more of the characters, I'd say yes. I would say though, just wait for like a half off sale.
Okay, that's fair. Val is just staring blankly at his
I'm
dead
listening.
eyes.
What you want me to do? I'm listening to what he's saying. I was gonna ask the same thing, like pricing wise and platforms. That Persona 5 Striker season.
Yeah, it's on
PC,
Switch,
PlayStation, and
PS4 and PC. Yeah,
Yeah,
I think you
console.
can pretty much get cheapest you can get it probably is either Switch or PS4. And I think
Do we have
PS4
any idea of on when it's gonna be available on Xbox, for example?
never.
Never. It's an exclusive.
It because I think most of the Persona games are actually either only on Sony or some of
Yeah.
them are on Nintendo devices.
Uh-huh.
So-
I don't think there ever was like an Shin Megami Tensei game on anything but Sony or Nintendo device.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
and this is like Bam said, this is no. Persona 4 Golden released on PC. So
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah, but
But
that's
if we talk about consoles, then yes, it's just confined to PlayStation and Nintendo. That might change in the future, though. I can see that coming. We'll see.
Microsoft ponies up enough money, probably.
Yes, I would say that after Sony completely annihilating their Japanese audience, Atlas might look to Xbox as well.
Yeah, that's for sure.
So
Then again, they might just double down on Nintendo.
yeah, that might be also the case. But if they do, good on them because it's a healthy work relationship. We got like Tokyo Mirages out of it.
Session.
That was a fantastic one. So
Or the SMT4, which was phenomenal on the DS, and then the remaster on 3DS.
so I take that working relationship any day. We can, if there's nothing else to add, we can go to Avengers.
And
Our favorite topic. Our favorite topic.
Avengers. Val, take it away.
Beautiful game. So apparently, Avengers has come out recently with the free update for the actual game, which is going to be for the new generation of consoles. It's a long overdue update because, as we all know, the game came out with some issues on in terms of performance.
Can they finally reach a stable 30 frames? This is the true question.
Apparently so. It's I don't know. It's just the update is not out yet, I believe. No, yeah, it's actually out already. It does feel and plays a lot better. I mean, I'm not entirely sure if I couldn't say it's a stable, like 4K 30 FPS. I think it still drops frames, or I can say. On their defense, I got to say it's got to be really difficult to, because Avengers does something that I don't see on many other games, which is they really allow a lot of things to happen on the screen at the same time. A lot of games kind of like limit, the enemies, because I do know this. I don't know why, but I keep bringing back Bungie and Destiny for some reason every single week. But I do know this because, one of the interviews on one of the developers on Bungie, on Destiny, they actually mentioned that they have they basically limit the amount of enemies that appear on the screen at some points, for example, during raids and stuff, because of the performance issues.
Yeah, it's called optimization.
Yeah. Well, still, it doesn't matter how good optimized, how well optimized the game might be. You may run into that kind of issues if you try to put, a lot of things on the screen at the same time.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. Like, because that's what you call optimization. That's why they do it. That's why they limit stuff.
So I guess with Marvel, they're just trying to do too many things, in my opinion. They're just trying to put, a ton of enemies and abilities and exploding stuff, and so it's gonna still have some issues, but it definitely looks a lot better than it used to be in the past. Also, they have released a new character, and there is some quote unquote end game, which I am not entirely sold out on, and I still think they need a lot more work on it. So I mean, the update overall is good. It's free. They claim it's a free update. Obviously, it's got to be free. I paid for the game already, and the jump of the new generation is not, it's not that. It's not a PlayStation 3 and a PlayStation 4 or an Xbox, 360 and Xbox One. This generation feels like it's more like a transition rather than a brand new full-on console or anything. So there is a lot of games that just, upgrading the graphics. At least they're not making you pay for it in advance. FIFA, like other games, they're making you pay extra money just to upgrade Call of Duty. And, I got some really bad cough this week, man. So it's just that they really just came out with the update and said, there you go, performance update, extra new superhero. It's all free. At the end of the day, they are doing a bit of, quality of life improvements, and they are heading the right way. They just need to polish them. They just need a little bit more time, in my opinion. I think they're heading the right way, though. It could be worse. Could be Anthem. I don't know what you guys think about it.
I mean, it is literally Anthem, but
It's not
at least
Anthem,
at least they didn't abandon it when it stumbled out of the gate, and stumbling is putting it mildly. I mean, I personally have zero interest in playing these kinds of games. That's just me. I hope they can turn Avengers around and make it maybe an enjoyable game at the end of the day, and hopefully get their player base back. On the other hand, I do see that live service games are more and more failing. We had Anthem, we had Division 2 not performing as well as the first one, and we have now Avengers. And hopefully, just saying it this way, or I'm putting it this way, people will learn from these mistakes. People will look at it, and people will, if you're like a gamer who likes to grind these kinds of games like Val, I just hope for you get a game you deserve. Like a good game that is good right out of the gate, that doesn't have issues like Anthem did, or Avengers did, or Division 2 did.
I mean, it falls, right?
We don't talk about that. Because Fallout 76 was the nuclear blast of live service games, unintended.
Not worse than Anthem. I think Anthem has been the worst AAA release in history.
Yes, it is,
And it
and
will be for a very long time, I think.
Yes, and it was so embarrassing for everyone involved that EA told BioWare basically Dragon Age 4 doesn't have to be a live service game anymore.
Anthem became the Castle Bravo of game industry.
Yes. And I don't know if you said that, but somebody told me that Anthem is probably an even bigger flop than ET was.
Yeah, I would say
It doesn't have the same impact because the gaming industry is too big, but from the sheer scale and magnitude and what was involved, it is just the biggest bomb the game industry has ever produced.
Yeah, that in my opinion, like ET obviously will. I think just ET and Anthem will be on the same discussion if we're talking about not the worst games in history, the biggest flops in history.
Yeah.
So they're gonna be both of them is gonna be ET and Anthem. Anthem will be there from now on. Always. And ET, everyone that obviously with a certain age and a bit of knowledge about gaming will know about ET. I obviously have played it myself because it was my time. Obviously, the younger generation will never play it and will never see it. Or if they know anything about gaming, they will know the ET it was the biggest flop, and now it's gonna be Anthem on the same conversation. Obviously, ET was a flop on its time, which wasn't even a 20th of the money that Anthem has cost the company and to the developers and to the studio. Like that Anthem has been in the works for more than 5 years. It's like, if you think about it, it's 5 years of someone's life working on something. You release it, and 1 year later, it's cancelled.
I mean, there was I recently watched video which essentially was tracking how BioWare, the developer behind Anthem, was losing developers along the development of Anthem. And over the 5-year period, apparently they dropped about 150 to 250 developers. Most of they lost also some of the most senior staff, like people that have been working at BioWare for over 15, 17 years, just because of like how stressful or how botched the development of Anthem was.
But still, I don't know. I feel bad just not only because I wanted the game to perform well and I wanted the game to be good, and obviously to have an alternative to a game like Destiny. You have something different and still shoot aliens in the face. It's just, if I feel really bad for those people, for the guys who have been on that studio working on that game, passionate about the game. And it's not a game like, I don't know, how long did ET take? Was it less than a year we made? About 8 months, I think last time I heard. It was about 8 months it took them to make it. I mean, it's 8 months. I mean, it's still it's a long time. But imagine you sitting down every single day for 5 years to make a game, and then that game will be remembered as the biggest flop in history. That must feel really bad. Regarding the same subject that we're talking about, Marvel Avengers, it's the same thing that Orco has mentioned. It kind of seems like Avengers is heading that way, but with this update, they're kind of like turning the boat a little bit into, I've seen a few people coming back to Marvel Avengers. It's not enough. I've got to say it. It is not enough to bring people back.
I mean,
they still have a lot of work to do.
Yeah, I mean, they did lose about 96% of the player base.
It's like it can't get any worse. I mean, it can get worse. It can. I mean, I'm not gonna say that. Fingers crossed. I mean, it's very, very difficult to get worse than that. Some of the player base has come back a little bit with the update. It's just, it's improving its quality of life, which is what the game needs. Now, the game needs content. You get the quality of life stuff, which is, you need to make here more relevant. I think the skins system is a bit weird. I don't know where to take the skin system. It's kind of confusing. At the same time, I'm paying for a AAA game, but then I have skins, like a free-to-play game, and I have to pay for this. And then you can still earn some of the skins with the in-game currency, which you fairly earn, like you kind of can get that with a bit of time investment into the game. You can actually acquire most of the skins through the store. But at the end of the day, I think my biggest issue is, there is nothing to chase at the end game. There is nothing to do. There is no challenges. There is only the same quests over and over and over again, which is not what this type of games is meant to be. Those type of games have to be made with something to, not just to chase. You got to give diversity to the the person that is playing the game, if you if you force the person that is playing the game to be playing the same quest 5 times after they finish the campaign, it's like, Jesus Christ, man, like, I don't want to do this anymore. That's what the game on its core is missing. Then we can talk about, I think we actually discussed this on the previous podcast that we actually did about Marvel Avengers. We were discussing Marvel Avengers, and I think it was Orcocast who was mentioning the heat detection, and the whole movement and everything was a bit off, and it wasn't as responsive, and it should be. Obviously, those are things that they're still improving on. They will be better in the future. I hope so. But in my opinion, is the end game. That's what us, kind of like the people like me that like. I know a lot of people don't like this word, but it's the looters. These are looters games. These are games that you have to spend your life on, quote unquote. It's not a game that you can pick up and put down in 1 hour. It's a game that you need to invest a couple of hours, 3 hours every day. You get stuff, and then you get gear, you level up, and you get more powerful. Those are very grindy games, looter games, and it needs, it needs diversity at the end game, because the story, the campaign is very, it doesn't matter how good, how bad it is. If you have created a game that is meant to be a grindy, a looter game, which your aim is to be the best setup for this ability, or the best setup for this other ability with your ability and mods and stuff like that, then you need to give those people, the end game has to be very important. You have to give those people a good amount of activities at the end, after the campaign. They are trying to fix it. I haven't, like, unfortunately, the one thing I have to say, I have not seen a single end game activity yet as new activity on Marvel Avengers. I think they're still working on it, and they're doing something, but there is nothing yet. They have released a new character, which is really cool. I believe is the female version of Hawkeye, isn't it?
Kate Bishop, yeah.
So it's Kate Bishop. It's great. I mean, one new character, it's all free, and you can play, you can get all the stuff, but yeah, it's still missing that extra bit. I mean, the quality of life features, which is quite an upgrade on graphics and everything, which feels really good.
That's good to know. So Avengers is on track. Hopefully, like I already said, I hope they can bounce back, at least for people who wanted to play this game, who wanted to like this game. I give at least kudos to one thing, that Square Enix hasn't abandoned it already right out of the gate.
Excuse me, Orko. I think Square Enix is putting some good work onto some games lately.
They always have. They never have been one publisher that flat out does only release bad titles. But what I commend them for is that they don't give up on Avengers, at least not for now. At least they try to bounce back with it, as hard as it is. That's the one thing, the one positive thing I can go out.
Yeah, I
Yeah.
think it's now pretty much just the decision on the side of the investors. If they're gonna, I think next year it's gonna be something similar to what happened this year to Anthem, where if they're not gonna be able to turn it around into a profit, I think investors might push them to actually exit the game at some point.
But we'll see what the future holds. For now, the game is kind of in limbo. Square Enix is working on it, and we'll see how it goes. We keep on reporting. With that being said, there isn't anything to add. I would wrap up. Then this was Orcocast 39. Thank you for listening. You all have been amazing. Audience, Lord Val, where can we find you?
Well, you can find me on Twitch, twitch.tv/LordVal Gaming. Also on YouTube, exact same name, LordVal Gaming. And on my socials, we got Twitter is LordVal Twitch, and TikTok, Instagram, and Facebook, LordVal Gaming. And if you're looking for copyright-free music to use on your streams, or YouTube, or your podcast, or anywhere else, on the car, everything, just search Lord Val Gaming on any music streaming platform, and all that music is copyright free, completely DMCA strikes free.
And you can find me on Twitch, the Orcosaurus, Twitter, the Orcosaurus, Instagram, Orcosaurus. I'm also on YouTube, Orcosaurus, very important. And I basically on every platform there is as Orcosaurus or the Orcosaurus. Just search me and find it out. And with that being said, Bam Bam is being in a dark corner, like always.
The dark corners of the earth.
Exactly. Great game. And with that being said, I bid thee a farewell. leave a comment, leave a like. Tell us how terrible we are in the comments or how much you love us. We take it all. Take good care of yourselves. Bye bye.
Bye.
People, everyone. Bye.